How you doing, buddy?
Really good, man. Things are happening.
Lots of things are happening. I see you I remember a day when Joel was like the archery guy, but now you're like teaching pitchers and catchers and stuff out in Philadelphia. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was really cool. Caleb Cotham, the big league pitching coach for the Phillies, contacted me just on Instagram and said he saw me on the Joe Rogan podcast. And he's a new archer and he's trying to figure out how to implement shot IQ in archery and in his coaching. So, yeah, so I'm like, well,
Dude, that is so awesome. So tell me about the experience. Like, was it applicable? Was it adopted? Like, can you speak about the experience that you had with them?
Yeah, it was fascinating because shooting's been my life forever. So I went into it knowing that I'm not an expert in baseball, but knowing that I am an expert in the mental game and the mental game equation. So being able to walk into a room of big league pitchers and big league pitching coaches and to ask a very simple, thought-provoking question. Like, this is the first question I asked him. Well, I went to dinner with Caleb and Cece, the head mental performance coach, the night before. And it was basically a fact-finding mission for me. Like, what are some of the problems that I'm going to be dealing with tomorrow? And so they talked about, some of the problems that the pitchers have, movement problems, cerebral problems, whatever it may be. I'm like, okay. And what I got from that conversation was that the players and the coaches don't know how they do what they do. So when you don't know how you do what you do, how can you possibly fix problems in these moments of truth on the mound, right? So the first question I asked him, I went in there and I'm like, okay, this is my first question for everybody. And I said, who are my coaches? And some of the coaches raised their hand. And I said, what's a mound visit sound like for you? And it was silence, right? Because it was a very strange question that they've probably never been asked before. And a mound visit sounds different for every coach and every player, I would imagine.
Right.
Kind of depends on the situation and what's going on. And one of the coaches spoke up and said, well, I asked the pitcher, how are they feeling? Like, okay, what is the, and it's funny because all the players are sitting there, they're looking at the coaches and I said, well, what do the players tell you? And they said, well, sometimes they say they're feeling good. Sometimes they say they're feeling bad. I'm like, what a worthless conversation.
Because I've been to so many of your seminars and we're friends.
Yeah.
I know that is a trick question.
Right.
How are you feeling?
Yeah.
Like,
how are you feeling?
Don't really care how you're feeling. What are you thinking about?
So they didn't have this language that they can speak on the mound because the pitchers don't know how they don't know how they're doing what they're doing. They haven't blueprinted it. The coaches don't know how don't know the blueprint of that specific pitcher. So it's just this conversation that they have on the mound, right? It's not that, the reason they're having this mound business is probably because the pitcher threw too many balls or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's a problem, right? And so we defined what a problem does. Like, a problem increases the volume of thoughts. So and that doesn't solve the problem, right? Because thoughts have no instruction, thoughts have no strategy. So if you stay in the realm of thoughts, you're not going to fix the problem. To fix the problem, you have to increase the volume of your thinking, which is your voice, and it's got to be the loudest one in the room. Mm-hmm. But you got to know how to think, and that's where the mental game equation comes in. You got to know where to put your conscious mind, when to put it there, and how to put it there. And then once you figure out what mental game you're playing, you got to blueprint it so that you know how you did it.
Right.
And in baseball, especially, there was a lot of pitchers that, well, when I'm having a good day, I'm not thinking about anything. I don't want to think about anything. I'm like, yeah, I get it, right? You're in a flow state. That's all good. Mm-hmm. But what happens when it's not a good day?
Right.
When it's not a good day, you got to be able to reach into a toolbox and know that when you say this word, it puts your conscious mind in this place. If that's your problem area, you got to be able to reach in the toolbox and know what you're going to say. And the coaches have to know that too. So at the mound visit sounds different. When they come out there, it's not, hey man, how you feeling? It's what are you saying? Right? Because what you're saying is what you're thinking. And when are you saying it? Right? Are they actually doing their blueprint for success? And so it just changes the language between the players and the coaches. And you just become more effective because you don't have good days and bad days anymore. As soon as you detect a problem, because your subconscious is always trying to push you toward efficiency, as soon as you detect a problem, you know exactly how to fix it. And that was very powerful. That's the transfer of information that I was able to give them. Walking into a room of major league pitchers, some of the best in the world, and just going, hey, what's the mental game of throwing a baseball? And it's always silence.
And those mound visits, I'm not a baseball expert either, but I've watched my fair share of games. I think the mound visits only happen if there's problems.
Right.
They don't go screw up a flow state. They just like, no, keep pitching, do your thing. But if they're they go out there when there is a problem and they're like, hey, what's going on? Do I need to replace you? Do I, what? And that's really interesting, man. Like it's so like, I guess maybe unscientific. It's like, how you feeling? What can we do?
Yeah. And what's really fascinating, what I'm finding out is from shooting, we had to figure out the application of open and closed loop control systems. We had to, because most people are moving their trigger finger open loop, right? Well, that's not good in shooting, but that is good in pitching because pitching is open loop. So what we found out is they're trying to fix problems in an area of the pitch that has to be open loop. But what they're trying to do is put consciousness into an open loop motor program, and it kills it. It kills the totality of the movement.
Wait, walk through that one more time.
So in shooting, we are trying to put our conscious mind into a movement, which is the pressure increase on the trigger. If we're talking compounds and releases, right?
Yep.
In most sports, you have to keep your conscious mind out of the movement. Because if you put consciousness into an open loop control system, it kills the totality of the motor program. Like, let me give you an example. Shooting a basketball, right? Free throw. It's the game-winning free throw, right? If you make this, you're going to be an absolute hero. And you have a routine that you do. So you bounce the ball 3 times, and then you spin it in your hand, and then you shake your rear end a little bit, and then you shoot, right? That's your normal routine. On the game winner, there's a problem because there's an increase in the volume of thoughts. If I make this, I'm going to be a hero. Man, I got to make this to support my team. Whatever. Your thought volume has become deafening. So to fix that problem, you have to increase the volume of your thinking. But if you put your thinking or consciousness into the movement itself, it will kill the movement. So if that free throw shooter is like, okay, so they bounce the ball 3 times, they spin it, they shake their butt, and then they're like, I got to break my wrist just right.
The Altitude Show is brought to you by Mountain Tough out of Bozeman, Montana. It's an amazing fitness app that has transformed my body and mind. But if you've never heard of Mountain Tough, it's an app. You can get it off the App Store. It's MTN Tough. And basically, it's functional fitness for the mountain athlete. That could mean you're a hunter or just someone who loves to spend time in the mountains, outdoors. There's programs for everybody up to like elite athlete level, all the way to beginner, all the way to people that are a little bit older. I tend to use what they call their minimal gear dailies because that's about how much time I have during the day, which is about 45 minutes. You don't need a lot of gear. I can do it at my home office. It's amazing. It's challenging every time. They change it all the time. They post a workout every day and delete it every day. So Sarah, Dustin, the team over there always take me through an awesome workout. You can use my code Dave20 to get 20% off your subscription. Go over to the App Store, get the app. You're going to love it.
Right? Or I got to get the ball to release just right at this if they put their consciousness, if they think about the movement, it kills the movement. So they got to put their conscious mind somewhere else. Where should they put it? What guides the ball? What is figuring out the trajectory path? What's figuring out the distance? Their eyes. So I want you to, if you watch a basketball game, this is so fascinating, bro. If you watch a basketball game now, you will see that when the player puts their eyes on the rim after power has been put to the ball, they will miss almost every time.
Puts
So
their
you have
eyes
to,
on the rim after power has been put on. So like after it releases from their fingers.
no, just any movement toward the basket. Once power has been put to the ball, because if they put power to the ball, but their eyes aren't on the rim, your eyes can't figure out the trajectory path of it.
Okay.
Right? So, I trained a local high school girls basketball team here. And I asked them, I said, what do you say to yourself in a free throw? And one of the girls said, I say follow through. Well, that instantly tells you that she's putting her conscious mind in the movement instead of in her eyes, instead of in the governing body of where the ball goes.
Does this relate to why there is some merit in picking a spot? I know that it's not the right language, but like how instinctive, there's some guys that like, I'll call out like Fred Eichler types that are really good instinctive shots, and they just can look at something and shoot it. Whereas like me, I need to reference something. But I still am staring at that spot. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, there's always merit in picking a spot because your eye, no matter how you aim, even if it's with a sight, is setting your arrow on a trajectory path, especially if you're shooting with no sights. It has to be looking at the target, and the smaller the spot you give it to look at, the more finite your movement, the better the anchor point is for the movement, right? It's always coming back to the center based on visual proprioception, right? So picking a spot is not bad. So I talked to an old basketball coach.
Okay.
And what he would do, not knowing any of this stuff, is he would write numbers on the front of the rim. Like he'd get on a ladder and get up there and write a number on the front of the rim. And he would make his people call out the number before they shot. So what did he do? He effectively put their eyes on the target before power was put to the ball.
Wow.
So you look at it, you just watch a basketball game, especially on a high school level, and you will see if power is put to the ball before the eyes get to the rim, it's a miss every time.
Wow. Well, no, I'm a terrible basketball player, probably my worst sport. But I do know that when I shoot, if I focus too much on how I'm like my hands and the ball,
that's it.
It's going to be a bad shot. There's just no way. But if I just run out there and go whew, like those are almost always my best shots. By the way, the same thing happens in golf sometimes. Like if you stand there over a shot and you take 3 practice swings and then you're like, okay, I'm going to take it back in one piece and I'm going to stop here and then I'm going to do this and you are legitimately effed.
Yeah.
Like you, right. I don't know that anybody's ever figured out the golf mental game all the way correctly, but I can tell you that there's something right about just a couple swing thoughts. And one of them is your target and then something else. I don't know what it is. Maybe just like one part of your swing that you're going to focus on or something. But when I do that and I'm just like, that's where I want to hit it. I visualize the shot. I know how to do this. I've been doing it my whole life. Yep. It's more likely to go close.
Yeah. So you can gain feedback on the takeaway on a golf swing, but once you start forward with it, you can't fix things in that portion of it. So keep your conscious mind out of that portion of it. So when you're at the top, that's when you would put your conscious mind into your eyes or somewhere other than the movement. And that's what was fascinating is, I'm asking these guys about specific problems where they're releasing the ball and all these things, and they're trying to figure it out. I mean, they have a pitching lab that shows you all the angles and all the movements in slow motion, and that's how they diagnose problems. But because they don't know about open and closed loop control systems, they don't know where to put the conscious mind. They don't know when to put it there. And
so where did you get to with them with that? Like, Is the pitcher is the mitt sort of like the rim would be with a basketball player?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
like,
Your eyes have to go to the mitt, to the catcher's mitt, or
yeah,
at least the path of the ball. If you're throwing a curveball, it would be a different location, right?
right,
Because the
right.
path is past the batter's shoulder or whatever, depending on which hand they are.
Hmm.
But you have to see that, because that's what guides the ball into the target.
Right.
So, but there's all kinds of, I mean, a pitch of a baseball is a very complex movement. I mean, you have to have weight on your feet in different spots and all kinds of feedback checkpoints. But once the leg is lifted and once the leg starts to go forward, you ain't fixing nothing after that. And
No.
that's where they're trying to fix stuff.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
we had some very candid conversations like, well, fellas, that's scientifically impossible.
And how was the feedback?
It was amazing. I mean, these guys are like, huh, well, that's why we've been trying to fix this guy for 5 weeks. And then we got him to change something before the leg lift, and it fixes the problem after the leg lift. You can't fix anything after the leg lift. So that's like secret sauce baseball stuff right there, folks. You're going to sell that.
When I used to give golf lessons, mostly beginners.
Mhm.
They would want me. I think they came in expecting me to be like, "Here's how you swing it. And you're going to hit it 300 yards,"
Yeah.
But I would always start at the basics of how to line up the shot, how to square the
Sure.
face, how to grip it. Because the reality is, well, number one, they're beginners. Their swing is not good anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
number two is they don't have the experience or the mental fortitude to change anything about their swing. It's like, if we can just get these fundamental things correct and you start off that swing correctly,
Uh-huh.
we're gonna knock out a bunch of low-hanging fruit. Now, as you get to be a
Yep.
professional at anything, obviously
Sure.
that changes, but I think that kind of jives with what you're saying, which is past a certain point in some of these movements, you can't change anything.
Can't change it.
Especially
It's
these pitchers have thrown tens of thousands of pitches, and and a lot of those bad habits are ingrained
Mm-hmm.
way beyond anything you can change in a day.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's easier now. They have a path to fix it, right? Like if
mhm.
they get on their back foot and they put their weight into their toe instead of their heel, that's a problem. Who knew, right? I didn't know that.
I don't
That's
know.
that's why I go into these places and I'm like, just give me your problems. Just give me your problems. We plug it into the mental game equation,
Yep.
and it gives us the solution, especially with what we know about open and closed loop control systems and just all the stuff that we've gone through in shooting.
Hmm. I would love for you to come to a jujitsu class sometime
Yeah.
and analyze it the same way, because I've found, I mean, 18 months in or 16 months in, and some of these movements are becoming unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I still find that, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say everything's happening so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If you're thinking too consciously about anything, you're going to get strangled
Mm-hmm.
by anybody with experience. So
Right.
it's almost like there's this, it's like you got to stay in that flow state. And like, but when you're practicing and you're drilling, you're like signing your name, right? You
Mm-hmm.
are not touching the lines. You are every movement correctly 5,000 times. And then when you roll, you don't have time to consciously think about much unless you get in a weird position and you have a second to take a breath and go, okay, now I'm going to do this. Other than
Mm-hmm.
that, it's like, it's got to be, so it'd be really interesting to dissect that
Yeah.
the same
It's
way.
it's really recognizing these micro environments that you find yourself in, and then
Mm-hmm.
having a word for a movement. If you need your conscious mind in a certain place,
Mm-hmm.
instead of it being steps of words and steps of movement, that's what you're going to take care of in training, right? But when you're rolling, you might have just a single word that means several different things, right?
Mm.
It means a whole bunch of steps all in once. And when you feel that pressure increase or that relaxation of your opponent or whatever, and you're like, now, right? Or,
Yep.
toes forward or point your toes or
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
needs to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's those moments when, because if your mind starts moving too quickly, you're going to miss opportunities. And then if you do find yourself in a bad place, like you're starting to go out, right? When you're starting to go out, you know what's happening to your body. Your mind goes into survival mode. The volume of your thoughts becomes deafening, and you usually end up succumbing to that move, whatever it is. And the coach is yelling at you, right? They're yelling what they want you to do, but you will probably have too much auditory exclusion because your heart rate's too
What's
high.
that? What's auditory exclusion?
So auditory exclusion, like how many deer have you shot with a rifle?
I don't know.
A lot?
No, I don't know. 15? I don't know.
Okay. Have you, let's say back when you were a kid, you shot a deer with a rifle and the rifle sounded like popcorn popping.
Oh, so yeah. I see what you're
Right?
saying. Yeah, I mean
Right?
it still
So
does.
that's,
Honestly, I don't remember the sound of a right when I'm on the target range. If I don't have my earplugs in, it
oh, yeah,
sucks.
blows
But
you out, right?
dude, when I shot my elk this fall in
Mhm.
Montana, I didn't have any earplugs in. I
That's,
freaking.
that's auditory exclusion.
Why does that
So
happen?
just an increase in adrenaline. It's a survival mechanism of your body.
Hmm.
Yeah, you know, that
Is it
tactile, which
actually
is,
less noise, or your body tricks your mind into thinking that it's less noise?
yeah,
Like it's
it's such an unimportant thing at that moment. You're thinking about other things. And so you
mm,
will get auditory exclusion, which happens to most people in wrestling matches and in jujitsu matches. The coach is screaming at them to, whatever the move is that they want you to do.
hmm
But because they don't realize that your heart rate is too high, before you do that, you have to breathe. So you have to put your conscious mind into breathing. Just give me one breath so that you can actually access the prefrontal cortex of your mind so you
mm,
can think about the move that needs to happen.
mm.
Because otherwise, the thoughts are too loud. Your thoughts will be louder than the coach's voice, and you will not hear it.
And they are more than likely survival thoughts. Like
Oh, yeah.
in jujitsu, it would be tap out, right,
Sure.
or go out, right,
Right. Sure.
as opposed to being like, okay, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
I've done this, and
And
here's what.
and you may have to buy yourself a little time, like buy yourself a couple seconds so that you can get a breath in. So you
Hmm.
go, okay, oh, I remember what to do with this, right? You will be able to
Right,
remember. You'll be able to remember moves. You'll be able to remember the counter. But
right.
most people start moving at a rate, and their thoughts are so loud that if you haven't done that particular move thousands of times, it's not just going to come to you at your moment of
No,
truth, right?
no, and there's so many moves. It's just like I often compare it to hunting because it's very difficult to teach somebody how to hunt. Really
Mm-hmm.
the only way to learn how to hunt is to go hunt, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can add to that wisdom and knowledge by going to and learning from people like you or whoever the expert in certain areas is. But
Sure.
really at the end of the day, you have to do the thing, and you got to do it a lot of times, and that takes years because hunting seasons are only a couple weeks
Right.
long often, right? So it
Right.
takes
Right.
years and years. I
Mm-hmm.
wish there was a way to do, and maybe someday we'll come up with this. Somebody will come up with this. And it's not online, like a physical multi-day a week class teaching people how to be better hunters, almost like a belt system for martial arts. I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would do it. I don't want to do it, but
Yeah.
somebody out
Those
there,
those do exist out there.
they do.
They do. They do.
Really?
There is hunting courses. I don't know the value of the. I mean, I don't know how good they are, but they
Being
are
as
out
though I've never heard of these things, I'm going to guess that they're not
there.
super
Yeah.
prominent since I've been in the industry for 15 years.
Right.
But okay. But you have been working a lot lately. I've been seeing a ton of stuff from you. And
Yeah.
I have a little behind the scenes to it because of my brother does some
Mm-hmm.
stuff with you. But
Yeah.
I want to learn about more about what you've been putting out. I've been seeing multiple things. I've been seeing mind IQ.
Mm-hmm.
I've been seeing kind of a new jazzy look to shot IQ, and then you branching out into these other areas um, that I find really, really. I'm so stoked for you.
Yeah. I
You
appreciate
deserve
it.
every inch of it, and because as we've discussed on this podcast, and everybody else has already said, your stuff spans far beyond shooting a bow.
Right.
So I want to hear about this. Tell me about all the obviously not like anything that is in the course or whatever, but I want to know about what you're doing. What's the movement? What's your plans? How's this experience going, etc.?
So it's been a fascinating ride. Like your brother is amazing at asking me the right questions.
Isn't it a little bit annoying though sometimes because he does
No,
that to
it's
me?
good, man. I mean, it's really good. I mean, all credit to him. He has asked some of the most important questions I've ever been asked in my
He's
life.
really good at that, and not everybody can do that. And if you don't have someone in your life that can do that, like Blake does,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad that you have the even keel, or not is it's just you're wise enough and you're intelligent enough, and you're a great coach, but you're also very coachable. So that is because to have people like Blake do what you guys have been working on,
Yeah.
that takes like you got to put your ego aside and
Yeah.
go, tell me, I'm here. I'm not insecure. I know what I do is great, but how can we get better? What do we need to do? So anyways, I'll
Right.
let you go, but yeah,
So,
props to Blake.
so him asking the question, can you define the mental game? That one question just basically started it all because when I went on Rogan, after Rogan, evidently Joel Turner is now an expert in everything mental. Like, I'm like, why are these baseball players calling me? Why are these hockey players calling me? Why are these PGA golfers calling me? I don't do any of those things, right? But
Right.
because Joe Rogan said that I'm an expert or what we do it because he
Hey.
said what we do at Shot IQ is applicable to everything else in life. I'm like, man, Joe, I like your thinking, but I don't know how to explain it at this point. So it was about 3 weeks after that podcast when I'm getting all of these questions and I'm working with Blake and he asked that question, can you define the mental game? And I'm like, yes, I can define it. And the reason we're able to define it is because we work in the hardest concentration realm there is, which is shooting. More importantly, which is archery. Because we figured these things out in archery, the rest of life's problems are pretty doggone easy to figure out. And then when he asked me that question, can you define the mental game? I'm like, yes, we can. So we defined it, and that's where it all started. And then going to Australia, and my buddy Ben Mayer, I'm explaining the whole mental game equation to him, and he's like, yeah, oh yeah, thoughts aren't thinking. I'm like, whoa, Ben, stand by. What did you just say to me? Right?
Now, who's
Thoughts
this?
aren't. What's that?
Who's this? Ben?
Ben Mayer,
Okay.
basically the grandfather of traditional archery in Australia.
I did not know that. Sounds like a cool guy.
Phenomenal man.
Okay.
So, good friend of mine. I was down there doing clinics in Australia, and Ben's brother is a Buddhist monk.
Wow.
And so that's where thoughts aren't thinking, that statement, that's where that comes from, is Buddhism,
Oh,
right? The statement, it is what it is, that comes from Buddhism.
really?
So, yeah,
I didn't
who
know that.
knew? Who knew? So I got this cultural education down there, but Ben said that to me, thoughts aren't thinking. And I took that and just expounded on it, right? Thoughts have no instruction. Thoughts have no strategy. Thoughts do not solve problems. Thinking is what solves problems, but you got to know how to do that.
Mm.
And you got to know where to put it and when to put it there. And we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about consciousness, right? Consciousness, thinking, concentration, all the same thing, right? Mindfulness,
Right.
it's all the same thing,
Right.
right? So just Blake asking me that question is what started it all. And then Ben giving me that thoughts aren't thinking. And then I just take these things because I don't know that they'd been expounded on before. Like, what does that
Mm.
really mean? Thoughts aren't thinking. What
Mm.
is the mental game, right? What's the definition of it? And
Mm-hmm.
so when I ask people those questions, what's the mental game of whatever? It's always silence or it's some made up thing that's not necessarily reasonable. I'm like, with what you just said, how do you practice that? right? Unless you know the actual mental game equation. And it's the same equation for literally everything. Like that's how I can walk into these places, not being an expert in anything, right? Except maybe some shooting stuff, but I can walk into a very high level place with all high level people. I'm like, give me your problems. And then we just start plugging them into the equation. And
Mm-hmm.
it gives you the mental game of the solution, which means something that you can actually practice.
Mm.
Because people say they're working on the mental game all the time. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What are you practicing? How do you actually practice that? So it's been a fascinating ride. It's been a short journey so far. I mean, I just started working with Blake last year, but it's been a short journey, but man, it is starting to really roll. So like being able to work with the Phillies. I just right before you called, I've got my Phillies shirt on, right? Because I just did an interview with was it NBC Philadelphia
Oh,
about me.
wow.
Yeah, about me coming down and they interviewed Caleb Cotham, the big league pitching coach for the Phillies, and they interviewed
Wow,
me.
man.
And
What a ride, right?
it's fascinating. So, this next weekend, I'm going down to train some of what I consider the smartest people in the world in Texas. I get to go down there and I get to meet these people that I highly respect,
Mm.
and I think I'm going to mentally destroy them.
Well, that they wouldn't hire you if they didn't want a challenge.
Right. So it's going to be fascinating for me to ask certain people these questions that I ask everybody, right? Like
Yes.
the signature test, the thoughts aren't thinking. What's the mental game for what you do? And
Yeah.
just I'm really excited to ask these people these questions, and the world will be able to see it soon on social media, I'm sure. But
Are you obviously archery is your life and it's still
yeah,
the center of your universe. I don't
sure,
I don't envision that changing, but what you're doing is you're taking this concept and applying it to these other activities and things to improve people's lives because they're passionate about their thing, or maybe even make a living. In the Phillies case, they
sure,
literally have to perform to get paid, otherwise they get fired,
right,
right?
sure.
So but you will still keep at the center of your universe archery, I assume, correct?
Absolutely, because archery is the basis for all of this stuff. Like I was dealing with a person the other day that was having debilitating anxiety attacks, panic attacks, right?
Hmm.
I'm like, okay.
So you're a
And
mental health coach now too?
I guess so. So,
Joel Turner is the
but I
number one
but
go-to mental health
but
coach.
think of this, right? Think of this, especially you have dealt with target panic. I've dealt with target panic. We're all constantly dealing with target panic. So I asked this lady, I said, and I know I've trained her in shooting before. And when I trained her in shooting, she was locked way off target, like way off target, right? Like several feet, shooting a compound
Oh,
release and
wow.
sights. She was locked way off target, like feet off the target, like I used
I
to
mean,
be.
I can't say that's crazy because I used to do that too. So
Right. I used to be exactly as she was.
yeah.
But that showed me that she's got some anxiety in her life, in her shooting,
Mm.
whatever. And then it came out all of a sudden with some panic attacks.
Mm.
And so I asked her, I said, since you've been having these panic attacks, have you shot your bow? She goes, no, I haven't. She goes, I didn't even want to shoot my bow. I said, you have to go shoot your bow because
Mm.
every archery shot is a miniature panic attack. Is it
Mm.
not? Think of it that way, right?
Totally. I've never heard of it. I've never heard of that, but yes, I totally agree.
So if you go out, like if you're having these panic attacks in your life, but you have archery in your life, if you have a controlled shot in your life, because otherwise you're just going to be this miniature panic attack is going to take over every single shot and you'll punch the trigger. But if you have the knowledge that we've given you at Shot IQ, and you know how to override your own central nervous system for an archery shot, which is one of the most difficult things for the human mind to comprehend, think about how that can help you in your giant panic attacks,
Oh,
right?
dude.
You go out and you shoot your bow and you're like, hell yes, I am so proud of this shot. I want to send this video to Joel Turner, right? I am so proud of this shot. I overrode my central nervous system. I did it.
Yep.
Now you take that skill set to your bigger panic attack, right? But for cerebral problems, with the fillies I'm dealing with, movement problems. For this particular situation, it was a cerebral problem. So the first mental game that has to be played in most cerebral problems is breathing. Because you've got to get your heart rate down so that you can think again. Because if your heart rate's too high, the volume of your thoughts is too high. And you have to increase the volume of your thinking, but you can't even access your thinking until your heart rate comes down a bit. So first things first, you feel the anxiety coming in, you do some breathing technique, whatever. There's lots of them. Choose one that lowers your heart rate the best. And then now you got a new mental game to play. Once you've gained control of your breathing, you've now accessed your prefrontal cortex. Now we can think, okay, where do you need to put your conscious mind in an anxiety attack? Well, you need to zoom out. You need to zoom out from the problem, because people with anxiety attacks have lost perspective. That's the problem. They've lost perspective for just a moment. I'm like, you got to look at it from a bigger view, like zoom out. Those are the words that you use. When do you use them? After you've gained control of your breathing. How do you get your conscious mind to zoom out? Speech, right? That constant, it's in the mental game equation. So getting her to just get a hold of her breathing for just a moment, and then say those words, zoom out or big picture. And then you can zoom out away from the problem and realize that your fears are not real, right? You've got a roof over your head. You've got a nice vehicle. You get to hunt all the time. Nobody's shooting at you, right?
Yeah.
Regain your perspective and you're like, oh, okay, this is not real. I'm going to just keep on going.
Yeah.
So, but practicing controlled shooting in archery is the catalyst for fixing a ton of cerebral problems. But you can't just shoot archery. It has to be controlled archery. Like, remember, we're using our bow for concentration practice. You're not just out there shooting your bow. So that's how you use it. And that's where all this stuff came from, is archery.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
The mini panic attack comment.
Every one of them
so true. Yeah.
Is a miniature anxiety attack that you are completely conquering when you shoot a control
when you
shot.
do it correctly. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And as someone who's had anxiety, still continues to have anxiety, much less now than before. But the biggest problem with it, especially when you pair it with depression, when you merge the two, you're not only in that heightened state of like your heart rate's too high, you can't think, but the depression also adds some more irrationality to it,
right?
To where you feel like there's no way out.
Just go back to that statement. Thoughts are not thinking. Right?
Exactly.
If you are depressed, it's only because you are stuck in thought. You don't have control of your thoughts. You only have control of your thinking, which is your voice. And it's got to be the loudest one in the room. So getting loud in your own head is just about the ultimate skill that a human being can have. Getting loud in your own head.
I had a moment a couple weeks ago where I just was in the dumps. It just wasn't a good week. We all have them. And but I'm on a very disciplined exercise regimen. and I have been for about a year. But this day I did not. It was the last thing on earth I wanted. I would have much rather hid and ate some candy.
Yeah.
But the process of tying those fucking shoes up, turning the lights off in my little area or on, and like even just the first warm up was annoying to me. Like, I do not want to be doing this. Son of a bitch. God, this is going to piss me off. Like, I just don't want to. Nothing's right now. But it reminded me of those shots where you're like, I'm going to freaking do this, you motherfucker. And I'm going to walk through this process because I know at the end I'm going to feel great. And it's going to be, this is the right way to do it. And actually, these are the moments that the easy moments to work out are easy to conquer. Easy. This moment is the one that actually matters the most, because if I can't conquer this moment, there's more of these coming. And that means the whole chain's broken. Because I can't remember it, but I've heard it said in more brilliant ways than I can. But basically, the easy parts of life are easy, right? Like when things are coming easy, it's easy. Where you make your money, or where really the rubber meets the road, is those moments. And maybe that can be applied right back to shooting. It can be where it's easy to shoot at a target when you're by yourself, and like the anxiety's there, but it's not very high. Throw a 6x6 bull slobbering and bugling, and a camera behind your shoulder, and 3 weeks of sleep deprivation and excitement. And that, now let's see if you can lace the boots up and walk through that process. This is where it really matters.
All that stuff you just said when you described that problem that you were having that day, right? And you talked initially about all the thoughts that you were having when you were speaking just a moment ago. And I want you to go back and watch that section.
Sure.
When you were speaking, you were talking only about your thoughts. Those statements that you made had no instruction and they had no strategy. And then you talked about tying your shoes. That is thinking. That has instruction attached to it. Thinking is the embodiment of instruction and strategy, right? Tie your freaking shoes. If you would have never decided to switch from your thoughts, you never would have put your shoes on.
No,
it's just the decision is the skill, right? You have to go, nah, these are thoughts. I got to increase the volume of my thinking, which is my voice. I've got to be the loudest one in the room. And here's the thing is, what a great exercise that you just went through of overriding your own central nervous system, overriding the limbic system in your brain that says, nah, Dave, we don't need to work out today. Let's go hide in the corner and eat candy, right? The limbic system loves that.
Yeah.
Right? Subconscious loves that. But the conscious mind, you're like, nah, man, you're such a sissy. Right? So what a great exercise for you to go through in that. And
you're right. Even just tying those shoes, it reminds me now, thinking through it, of your signature exercise or whatever, or maybe it's like attaching the release and just going, okay, here I go, whatever. But it was like, this is the first conscious movement that I'm going to make. And then I'm going to go turn the lights on in my damn gym. And then I'm going to grab the kettlebell and I'm going to set it next to my foot and I'm going to hit play on the workout. And then I'm going to do every movement and it's going to suck. But I'm going to do those steps. And then 35 minutes later, I got a sweat and I feel great. And it's one of those things where, do you agree that the most important time to go through that process in a shot or whatever the thing is are the moments where it's the hardest? That's why you say seek that stress, those moments, overcome them. And then the easy ones are easy, man.
Yeah. You had to get loud, right? So I'm in there training all the pitchers, and this one pitcher says, what do you mean get loud, in my own head? I didn't even answer him. I looked at the coaches and I said, when's the last time you forced him to get loud? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, when's the last time, like what we do in shooting all the time, right? I'm shaking the crap out of your bow. I'm making you shoot on one foot. I'm yelling at you. I'm tapping you on the head with an arrow, whatever. That doesn't seem to exist very much in the sports world. I'm like, when was the last time that pitcher pitched a bullpen, and which is just basically pitching practice, right? And there was 10 other pitchers standing around the mound yelling at them.
I bet they've never been asked that before.
They've never done it before.
That's crazy.
Right? So it's, they're not forcing their people to get loud. That is the ultimate skill of us human beings. We have the ability to get loud in our own head, to override whatever limbic system or central nervous system we need to override to get the problem solved.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the crowd doesn't count, because the crowd, I know this as a musician, I can mentally pretend there's nobody in a crowd. I never look them in the eyes. I just look above their heads and there's no one there. So like if you're a pitcher, I've never done this, but it would stress me out much more if 10 of my peers stood behind me than having 10,000 people in a stadium.
Sure, whatever it is, it's just a problem. It increases the volume of thoughts. Like if mom and dad are in the stadium, if your coach just yelled at you, whatever. Learn to use a crowd, right? I like to use people because, as you've seen in my presentations, I'm very interactive with the crowd because I love asking them these questions that I really don't think they're going to have the answer to. Maybe I will run into that someday, and that'll be awesome. But learn to use the stress to make you stronger. And that's
do you remember the Stone Cold Killer?
Stone Cold Killer. So
you were given a seminar in Oregon here a few years ago, and I can't remember what question you asked. I won't mention his name. He's a friend of all of ours, but you asked something like, raise your hand if you've ever, struggled and missed an animal or something like this. Or something, and everybody raised their hand, right? Except for this one guy. You're like, you have never, like, whatever the thing was. He's like, nope, I'm a stone cold killer. You don't remember this?
No.
So now my dad and I have this guy nicknamed Stone Cold Killer.
Okay,
but he oh yeah, he's a killer for sure. There's no doubt about that. And actually, he's one of those guys that kind of is stone cold. Like he. Yeah. Allegedly has never really struggled with a lot of things. And as you've admitted in the past, there are people that exist that are just wired differently. And
absolutely. And it's a personality thing, right? But here's the thing. At some point, that person being a stone cold killer, or if they're an amazing pitcher with this super calm personality, if you don't know how you do what you do, how are you ever going to pass that on to the next generation? At some point, you're going to age out of being a major league pitcher. At some point, you're going to be so old that you can't get up the mountain and you just hunt in other ways. Right? And then you've got a grandson or you've got a granddaughter or whatever it may be. You take this young person, and if you don't know how you were a stone cold killer, that is now wasted information for the human race.
Yeah.
Right. Because we don't ask the right questions. Like I had never been asked to define the mental game before. I had not been asked the right question, and I wasn't asking the right questions either. So that's a hugely missed opportunity that we see all the time is, I've got all these coaches. I mean, the baseball teams have coaches on top of coaches for the coaches, mental performance coaches, There's so many coaches walking around there, and hopefully some of them were players, but very few of them really knew how they did what they did. And even that's just as simple as, what did you say to yourself when you threw a pitch? When did you say it?
Right.
Just that information will give you the world, because that's how you did what you did. And now that we know that, we can truly harness the power of it.
Well, I like what you said, though, about passing it on. I've thought there's hunters that I know specifically, because hunters tend to be pretty secretive, mostly for good reason. But especially these solo guys, these guys that hunt primarily solo. And then there's a couple people in my mind where I'm like, I think about like, what's going to happen? You have so much knowledge and so many wonderful and amazing experiences. And when
Mhm.
you die, all of it's gone. Your spots, your knowledge, your wild experiences and stuff. And for the guys that aren't sharing these stories or writing books or whatever, I think about that. Like one person in particular I'm talking about is probably one of the best hunters I've ever known. And he doesn't tell anybody anything. The only
Mhm.
things he's ever told me, he's specifically told me not to talk about on this podcast.
Mhm.
And he's highly effective at what he does. And I know how he does it.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, man, it's a little bit of a, I get it. He's worked hard at it. But also I'm like, dude, I don't want all that stuff to be lost that's in your head. Like it's
Mhm.
so valuable, you know?
Yeah.
That's kind
Yeah,
of
and
weird.
it's each person's prerogative on what they
Sure.
do. I mean, I don't have to tell people how to call in tons of bull elk, but I do because I want people to experience that. And I
Yeah.
also want people to have the information so they stop doing it in these biologically incorrect ways and
Mm.
being unsuccessful and then maybe leaving the sport or just becoming frustrated or whatever. I mean, think about
Mm.
target panic. You get these kids in the NASP program, not to call them out, but most of the kids in those programs rot with target panic. Why is that?
What's the NAS program for people that
It's the
don't know?
National Archery in the Schools program.
Gotcha.
And, they shoot.
Great idea, but
It's a
probably not
great
executed
idea
very
to
well.
introduce people into archery, but their instruction model sends these kids directly into target panic
Mm,
because they already have target panic when they start archery. They just don't know it,
right.
right? It's not a disease. It's something that we're born with. But you watch down the line. If you were to get even with the line in a NAS program in these huge tournaments, you'll see maybe 5%
Mm,
of those kids are actually holding on the spot. They're all shooting no sights.
right.
Maybe 5% of them are actually on the spot. The rest of them are locked off target and they yip to the target. And they're
Wow.
okay at it. And, everybody gets a participation ribbon and then off you go in life.
Mm,
But there's a few anomalies. Those kids that can actually hold on the spot, they destroy everybody else. Right.
right.
So if that kid or if the coaches knew how that kid does what he does, then you can actually share that information and then you can retain way more people in the sport that we love of archery.
Well, they need to hire Joel Turner to fix that program.
Well, yeah, no kidding.
Where does it go from here? Like where do you want it to go? Do you want to keep expanding into these different activities? Is that something that you want and you're
Yeah,
encouraging
I
or
do. I mean, so we've got the Turner model.
uh-huh.
Turner model is basically the mothership. It's the umbrella of the online courses, which is Shot IQ and Mind IQ. So we made
Mm,
an online course and with the massive help of your brother
yeah.
and some other folks, made the online course in Mind IQ, which is what we do at Shot IQ for the rest of life. It's
Mm,
the science of how you do what you do. It's the mental game equation. It's the thoughts aren't thinking. What does that really mean? How do you apply that to your specific movement problem or cerebral problem? So that online course is out there. But really, it's about speaking and me getting in front of people and just opening this can of worms because it's just not open yet. And we're still stuck in, oh, I'm working on the mental game. Oh, good job. You
what does
know,
that mean?
what the hell does that mean? Right. So just like I said, I consider myself the master of the unknown obvious. There are people doing it already, but because they don't know how they're doing it, they're not truly harnessing the power of it. Right? This
Right.
is Mind IQ, Turner model, Shot IQ, whatever your problem is, this is how you become the ultimate problem solver.
Mm, that's a cool way to look at it.
Right? You become the ultimate problem solver. Whatever problem you come upon, you know how to dissect it into the mental game equation. It gives you the mental game of the solution, something that you can actually practice. So that allows you to master these things. It's not, I mean, people can physically master things, but if they don't have the mental mastery of it, it's a fleeting moment in time and you'll keep having these good days and bad days. Let's
Yeah, but
figure out how we do what we do.
there's people that are just naturally there's a jiu-jitsu guy I follow who
Mm-hmm.
got his black belt in 5 years as opposed to 10, which is the average.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just really talented. I mean, he was beating black belts the first week in class.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just now getting to the point where he could probably actually explain what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And like where the techniques coming in and the specific movements when he gets up against these other world-class guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's people out there that are just naturally gifted, but you can't make the argument that if they could actually blueprint it, that they wouldn't get better. They may be damn good, like Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was great, like a great golfer in college and high school. He dominated everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But when he got his teacher, Butch Harmon, his coach,
Mm-hmm.
and he started working with him, his game at 10x, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know why it was specifically what they did or whatever, but my guess is really started to break down all the things as opposed to just leaning on natural talent and like mental toughness and
Yep.
will and all these things. So you can't make the argument that no matter how good you are at the thing, that it won't make you better just trying to blueprint it and have
Mm-hmm.
this process and these tactics and strategies to
And
work through problems.
right, for those people that are afraid, there's a lot of people that are afraid and they think that overthinking it will screw it up. That is true because your thinking, your consciousness is placed in the wrong arena, right? It's not put in a place where it can help you. It's put where it is actually detrimental. But you have to know that. The only way you're going to know that is by knowing open and closed loop control systems, right? So it's not that you're overthinking, it's just that you're thinking incorrectly. So when you finally map out your thinking, like this phenomenal jiu-jitsu guy, have you ever asked him what he says to himself
Well,
during his...
I don't know him. I would love to. I would
That's
love
the
him.
question. What are
Yeah.
you saying out there? And if he tells you nothing, that's an answer too, right? But that means that he's trained to the point of his subconscious is running everything. But when it's a bad day, what we've done is if you're having a good day, like I said, man, just keep on rocking, just keep on doing your thing. But when it's a bad day, you have to have a toolbox and you got to know how to use the tools that you have placed in there. You are the one that makes the tools and you place them in there. This is the word I say at this moment in my pitch. This is the word I say at this moment on my shot. Whatever your thing is, right? If it's a movement issue or a cerebral issue, you figure out the where, you figure out the when, we know the how.
How can we stress to more hunters how important off-season hunting is and actually shooting at game? Like you've done classes. I have a lot of hunters on here, obviously, and I'm a hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since I started wild pig hunting 20 years ago in the spring, I realized how much I was missing out on in terms of just practicing. There's some people that are blessed living in an area where they can shoot 100 does, or they live in some place where there's invasive species where they can practice this process on live game, because there's only so much you can do on a target, in my opinion. It's just not the same as even placing a pig in front of somebody. It doesn't even have to be a 6x6 bull or a moose or anything. It's just throw a 100-pound hog in front of somebody and watch them lose their marbles.
Right. So the task does not change. You shooting your bow is you shooting your bow, but the determination has to change. And what does that determination have to be turned into? An increase in the volume of thinking, because all you're doing when you put yourself in front of game or you shoot these high stress tournaments, there's an increase in the volume of thoughts. And therefore, when you put yourself in these situations, you get reps, an increase in the volume of your thinking. It's the ultimate skill to become the ultimate problem solver. You got to get loud in your own head. So seek stress in your training. That's all you're doing with hunting. You're just training. This is the test. This is why we're doing all this stuff. And so putting yourself in those situations, like there's nothing that makes me shake like shooting at Vegas or shooting.
The Altitude Show is brought to you by GoHunt.com. GoHunt.com is the place for all things hunting. And the coolest thing is that their app now incorporates not just maps, but also some of the key features from the website, including draw odds, harvest success, public land percentage in an area, trophy potential, weapon season type, season dates, all incorporated into the app. They know that most of you, like me, are using your smartphone most of the time. You're not on your desktop. So they brought all these features over into the Go Hunt app to make the experience for you as a hunter just a little bit more convenient. So go check it out. If you're not a member of Go Hunt, you should be. It's an incredible service. Go become an insider. Use my code Altitude. You'll get a discount, and you will also become a better hunter. So go become a Go Hunt member, and you'll be able to use the same features that you use on their website right there on your app, and along with your maps. So use code Altitude. Helps the show. Have a good day.
In Lancaster, in these indoor tournaments, when you're trying to hit something the size of a penny, right? And in Bodie's case, if you miss the penny, that's $100,000, right? You talk about pressure, man. That's when it's somebody's livelihood like that. That's massive pressure. So let me give you an example of knowing what's in your toolbox and how to use it. So, did you get to watch the Lancaster finals?
I did not.
Oh my gosh, you gotta watch it. It's one of the best shoot-offs in the history of archery. Bodie's up there, comes in third seed or fourth seed.
You know what? I did. I'm sorry. I did watch this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So he shoots 9-12 rings in a row. He never misses any of the rings that he's shooting at. But on one shot in the last match against Mike Schlosser, Bodie draws back and aims. And I'm standing behind him in the coach's box. And I watch him press that Onyx clicker to the click. I'm like, okay, here we go. And then it's not firing. And it's not firing. And I'm like, oh, come on, boy. reach into the toolbox, boy. Right? So finally, he reaches into the toolbox and he pulls out the word squeeze. And the shot finally breaks because he didn't have enough time to let it down and start over. Oh. So he was forced into reaching in the toolbox. I'm like, what was up with that one shot? He goes, man. He goes, I drew back and I aimed and everything was good. He goes, man, the hold was money. And then he said, when I pressed the click, he goes, I noticed that my hand was shaking. So noticing that your hand is shaking, his release hand is shaking, right? So noticing that's a problem, which increases the volume of thoughts, right? The thought being, holy crap, my hand is shaking, right? That has no instruction. It has no strategy attached to it. He was able to realize that in real time. He goes, oh, wait a minute. I'm having thoughts. I'm not thinking. So he reaches into the toolbox, the Shot IQ toolbox, and he pulls out the word squeeze, and he knows how to say it. And he stays in the ease of squeeze.
Is that outside his normal realm of what he would be saying in that shot? Does he always use squeeze, or is he saying...
He doesn't usually have to talk anymore, right? Because he's been in so many high-pressure shoot-offs and he's killed so many critters. He's very calm in those moments. But every now and again, and you don't know when these problems are going to occur. They are going to occur for everyone.
Right.
And when they do, you got to know where your toolbox is. You got to know what tools you put in there, and you got to know how to use them. So that's just a prime example of having a good day, having a bad day, whatever. We don't have those. We have a controlled shot that we shoot every single time. And the old subconscious being so strong will throw those thoughts in there.
Right.
It wants to get you out of that stress. So you got to use the toolbox to override your central nervous system.
Did he win?
He did. Yeah, he won the whole shooting match. He never missed any of the rings. He shot 9-12s, which is a tiny little white ring that's in, I mean, it's smaller than a dime, significantly smaller than a dime. And it's out in the 7-8 ring of the target. So if you miss the 12, you're not going to win. So you have to hit the 12 every single time.
Do you think shooting at game is less stressful than that situation?
Very much so.
Wow.
Very much so. Because people that, well, when you work at that,
you're making a living, yeah,
when you're working at that high of a level, any miss and you're done, You're just done. You're
Mm.
not winning anything. So, shooting at game is so much bigger of a target, and your margin for error is so much bigger, but it's nothing more than a problem like when that giant bull came into me in Colorado this year. He came around the corner. I'm like, oh my God, that thing is a monster, right?
Mm-hmm.
That has no strategy. That has no instruction for me to think that way, right?
Yeah.
But I can't control my thoughts. I can always control my thinking. So
Uh-huh.
then when I finally, got the full draw on him, and that's when I had to start thinking. I had to start talking. I had to go, well, the brush is too high right here. And you can see in that video of me watching, I'm, shooting my compound barebow and I'm following him with that arrow, but I'm looking, my eyes are out in front because I'm not going to shoot him at the body angle that he was at. So I'm having to figure out all this stuff and I'm looking ahead of him like, okay, there's a dip in the brush. That's where I'm going to yo him and stop him right there. But luckily for me, unluckily for him, he started raking a tree once he got in that little gap. But I'm looking at down the shaft of my arrow, and I'm like, man, I'm going to hit that brush. So I'm at 12,000 feet, and it is steep where I'm at. I had to dig a hole for my back foot, so I had some level ground to put my foot on. And I'm looking down the shaft of my arrow. This giant bull, bigger than any bull I've ever dealt with, is at 15 yards, raking a tree broadside. And I'm like, I'm going to hit that brush. I got to get over that brush. So I had to stand up on my tippy toes, which makes you extremely unstable. And you can
Right.
see all this stuff in the video of the GoPro. I mean, you see me raise up just a little bit.
Right.
And I'm shaking like a dog crapping tacks, right? Doesn't matter. My only job is to move the trigger. So I had to self-instruct myself through that. And, putting yourself in these situations is a must. You have to seek the stress so that you get reps in getting loud in your own head.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that for those of us that don't, I've always wanted to do a tournament because of what you're describing. I've
Mm-hmm.
never done one. I mean, when I was a kid, I did some silly ones, but I
Mm-hmm.
haven't done a serious archery tournament before. Not to say that I'm qualified to do at that level that you're talking, but just more like
Oh,
local and regional.
you have to. Like, I finally got my brother to go shoot Vegas. I got one of my best friends to finally go shoot Vegas. Go shoot at Vegas and stand on that line. People are like, it's no big deal, right? It's indoors, 20 yards, no big deal, right? You stand on that yellow line and they say, this is your first scoring end. And, your legs start to shake. Your bow arm starts to feel weak. And like, what the hell is happening to my body? Right. And talking about you can never take the same body with you. So you must take the same mind to the line, to the hunt, to the mound, whatever that may be.
Mm,
But to know what that mind is, you have to have blueprinted how you do what you do.
right. Right. Um, is that the closest replica of it's probably the closest replica you can get to shooting at games since it's more stressful than shooting at games. So maybe for people like me and those out there that want to improve their game at game, it's like enter some tournaments. I can tell you for a fact because I have a jiu-jitsu tournament next week, which will probably be one of the last ones I do, but I'm doing it only, and I mean only, just to conquer my mind,
Mm-hmm.
because going into a room full of people that are 10 years younger than you
Mm-hmm.
that are trying to kill you
Mm-hmm.
is a real brain fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's nerve wracking. And
Yeah.
I did it last year and I'm like, dude, I'm scared. I'm legitimately scared. And I did it and I got done and I'm like, I'm proud of myself for doing that. I lost. This time's a bit different, but I'm like, I like challenging my mind like that. I like going into those environments. And with archery, I've kind of I won't say conquered because I know that any point it can come back. But I
Mm-hmm.
used to dread shooting with people. The total archery
Mm-hmm.
challenge seemed like a nightmare to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no problem, man. No
Mm-hmm.
problem. And credit to you, by the way.
Thank you.
Like that's not even having 50 people stand behind me at Total Archery Challenge and watching me shoot isn't even remotely in the same ballpark as shooting at a bull elk to me.
Yeah.
If there was something attached to it, to your point, like if I was going for $100,000, that would definitely change it. Or if it was, for a title or something. But usually it's just social. You're just having fun, right? But I want more of that in archery because that has helped me so much. Just the progress that I made, but I still think I know there's more progress to make because the bulls that I shot at last year, I executed 90% better than I would have done 5 years ago. But I still made a couple mental F ups. Maybe not as much in the actual shot mechanics and more in just little details that I should have been able to consciously know, like limbs and stuff like that. That I'm experienced enough to know that I should have just done something a little bit different and the outcome would have been different. But I still consider that part of the mental game. Like,
Sure.
Because when you get excited, you miss the details. Like, oh shit, that limb, or just maybe just let them take one more step, or just staying just a little bit more conscious. I think I would have had a freaking another world class Roosevelt last year. I mean, I would have. It was 30 freaking yards broadside.
Yeah. You gotta get loud,
it.
bro. Tell
Dude,
me.
the problem with that one, Joel, is I was so patient. I was sitting within 150 yards of that bull for 4.5 hours, and I was laying on my ass, and I had cows around me the entire time. I was fine, dude. I had a 5-point walk right up to me a couple times. I was like, I felt good. I kept myself in the moment. I was like, this bull is freaking dead. The first pass he makes, he's dead. And what happened is all of a sudden I see this 5-point flying back over the hill towards me, and I hear right, and I see those tines, and it's like a 310 inch 6x7 Roosevelt coming over the hill, which is a remarkable animal.
Yeah.
And I think my heart rate increased just enough in that moment and I didn't have enough time to totally get it under control that I just made a couple brain errors. Like I said, I went through my shot process. That's not the problem. The problem is I shouldn't have shot at that moment. I should have waited. I should have let him come just a little bit more. It was probably 2 or 3 steps, and I would have had him wide open. But I tried to shoot through a hole. I allowed the anxiety of the moment to force myself into thinking that if I don't shoot right now, I'm not going to get a shot. But it's not true.
Right.
And that has been my number one mistake in archery hunting elk, is being able to control it even just a step beyond the process of the shot. Think through, is this the best moment, or would it be better just to hold on? It's all good. It's good. 2 more steps, buddy.
Yeah. We are the ones that rush the shot. They are not the ones that rush the shot.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. And I got to lay awake at night, twice a week and think about that. You blibbering idiot. Like, you have been doing this for so long. How do you not let that elk just walk wide open? You think you got to shoot right there. Like, what is that? Is that the same problem as the general ethos of what you talk about? Is that your mind kind of wanting to get it over with because it's so stressed out?
It's just when you have that, I got to do it now. That is a thought. That is not thinking, right? You're allowing the volume of your thoughts that you can't control. You gotta, and that really comes from experience in hunting. That's what's so difficult about that, is you gotta have these experiences. But again, it's just a problem, which is nothing more than an increase in the volume of thoughts. So you got to get loud, because you're gonna be like, oh man, there it is. Nope, you got to wait. Strategy, right? Nope, you got to wait. Just like when I'm at full draw on that big bull I shot in Washington a few years back. I'm at full draw, looking down the shaft of my arrow. He's 10 yards away, broadside, and I can feel it starting to go. I'm going to lose control of this shot. And I'm like, nope, I ain't going out like that. That's the decision that I made, right? The volume of my thoughts were, oh my God, you're going to kill a bull of your lifetime. Oh, you're going to be such a hero. Right? There's no instruction. There's no strategy. And I'm like, nope. Right? I had to increase the volume of my thinking. So I said, nope. Keep pressing. I'm pressing on my grips here. I'm like, keep pressing. Pop, boom, shot that bull. And it means so much to do that, right? Like if you would have killed that bull, like let's say 10 years ago, if you would have killed that bull with an uncontrolled shot, you would not be proud.
No, I can think of the bulls that I have killed with uncontrolled shots, and it's awesome, but it's just kind of like I know I didn't
Mhm.
do that right.
There's
I
that
know
little thing but when you shoot a bull with a controlled shot, you're like, that was the greatest
I
accomplishment.
conquered my mind. I
Right.
conquered my mind. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder what your thoughts are on we're gonna go into the blacktail realm for a second because
Okay.
I know that you love blacktails, and I'm just beginning my love really for blacktails,
Okay.
even though I grew up around them. So last year you've hunted this farm that I hunt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Me and one of my best friends put months into learning because you and I just went out there and threw some stands up and
Right. Right.
had some fun.
Right.
We put months into this,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of cameras, a lot of time, a lot of everything. And a couple takeaways that I had. One, it doesn't matter how much you prepare for blacktails, they're still blacktails. So you can think you have them all figured
Mm-hmm.
out.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go sit there and they're going to twist your mind and make you so frustrated because they show up on their own schedule and you never know what it's going to be. And the reason I'm bringing this up is there's a whole nother mental game that goes beyond the shot, specifically in hunting, but maybe this spans into the rest of the universe too, that I was thinking about when I was in that blacktail stand. My mind wants to go home every minute I'm in that stand. Like I'm cold, I'm
Mm-hmm.
wet. That
Yeah.
bucket, he hadn't showed up in 3 days on cameras. Why do I think he's going to show up right now?
Yeah.
I might as well just go home, call it a day, or shoot the first thing that walks by.
Uh-huh.
And there's this fight. It's constant in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Just shoot the forked horn. Just you could, and actually that's what ended up happening. Long story short, I didn't shoot my target buck because I ran out of time, and I got I shot a meat buck or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But this whole month, and by the way, my buddy Brent goes out and like on his like third or fourth sit, the biggest buck on the farm walks by, he shoots it. Every time I don't go out, the damn buck that I'm trying to kill walks by one of my cameras, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting in this, and it's like this weird. Tree stands are weird because you're like sitting in the middle of a forest, and it's not like you're seeing deer all the time. You're not.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the biggest challenge is just fighting right here.
Oh yeah.
It's just I just want to go walk around so bad or something,
Right.
you know?
And blacktails are the worst because you can't pattern them. They're totally
Nope.
nocturnal. They don't follow any trails. They're a nightmare. I mean, they are a mind screw as far as deer go. They're horrible.
So how do you deal with that mind problem though? Like, I mean, I feel like it's just like I said, every minute I got to conquer something. Nope, I'm staying till 2. Nope, I'm staying till 3. Nope, I'm staying till 4. You can't get out till dark now. You might as well stay the whole day.
That's right.
You know, I haven't seen shit, but,
Yeah.
and then the funniest part about this, Joel, is so the first day I sat, my target buck pops out an hour later behind me, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, not on a trail. I'm like, oh my God, holy shit. He's here.
Yeah.
Grab my bow. And everybody says blacktails don't look up. Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. Grab my bow, tink my freaking safety harness. He looks up, gone.
Oh, no.
So I'm thinking, oh my God, I could have ended this on the first day. And so I probably had to sit another, I don't even know what it was. I sat a lot of half days, quarter days, but a lot of days. Finally, I just gave in. I'm like, screw it. The next buck that comes in, I'm drilling them. And I did, and it felt great. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Walking off the hill with this buck that I shot, this little buck, and my buddy texts me. He just got a cell phone picture of my target buck headed towards my tree stand.
I swear to God, they have trail cameras on us. I think
I'm almost to the point where like I like the trail cameras; they're fun, and for me, it's only just knowing, like, just it gives me a little confidence that I know that there's bucks there. Like, there's a lot more bucks on that place than I thought there was.
Yeah.
Past that, I think they're a distraction, and I think they screw up your strategy because really, at the end of the day, once you have a good spot, it's just about consistency. You just got to be there because
Yeah.
they're going to show up 3 or 4 times during that month, and you don't know when it's going to be. The cameras aren't going to help you. They're just going to tell you when you should have been there.
Yeah. And you
So,
got to set it up so that they do that. Blacktails are notorious for that 100-yard circle. If you're in that spot, they're going to circle that spot to get the wind on that before they come through there. So you got to have some kind of blockade or something on your backside, that like a cliff or something that doesn't allow them to get around behind you to get your wind. Because that's been the biggest killer. Is I think we set up in places that are too close to our desired spot, whether you're hunting over bait or not or whatever, your funnel, and you got to get out of that circle. And I think that, you talk to these blacktail killers, and that's one of their main things is getting outside of that circle.
really, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. But thinking back through all the data we have now, the small bucks, no problem, dude. You can shoot
Sure.
those every day.
Sure.
But those big bucks, the 3 or 4 big bucks we were hunting, my buddy killed one of them, and it wasn't on bait at all. It was just a travel route, and it was a really focused ridge and a really focused spot. And we had a lot of evidence that these bucks in this 3-day stretch just love this. There might have been a hot doe or whatever, and that's where he killed that buck. So it wasn't even on a bait. But if you look at and it's legal to bait in Oregon for those that don't know. Yeah. But if you look at the bait sites, they're great at pulling in does, and they do pull in the big bucks at night. But there was very rare evidence, and I'm talking like maybe under 5 times in 6 or 7 weeks of data in the middle of the rut, where those big bucks come under that stand to the bait in the daylight.
Yeah, very difficult to hunt that way. I don't hunt them that way anymore. I get way off of it.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, just get off and get on the trail.
We started getting frustrated. We're like, why are we not getting pictures? Why is there 5 does that are at the bait, and there's no big bucks? But we know, and then on a camera 100 yards away, that big buck's there. And what we noticed was they actually are there, but they're not in that circle. They were coming once we had cameras on the periphery. They were coming and they were going around it, and they were always there around those does, but they don't come into the bait with them.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. If you can find those spots where, like, I know now that I've watched a little bit out there, I know a couple trails that I'm like, I would just be willing to bet my money on that trail right there. Maybe you still keep the bait sites going or whatever, just to keep the deer on the property, but I don't know, man. It is exciting though, knowing there's deer coming.
It is. It's fantastic just seeing a blacktail buck, and then when you like on camera, it's really cool. It's usually at night, but man, when you see one in person and you see that white face coming through the timber, it's like, oh, there he is,
dude. It gets your heart rate.
Oh,
like,
boy.
I don't know. It's competitive with a big bull elk. I'll tell you that, because they're so hard. At least with elk, I can find elk most days of the season. Generally, I know that I'm in the area of an elk. But those big blacktail bucks, I don't know for sure that they're still on the property.
Yeah,
I have no idea where these things go. Yeah. And then after the season, in the December rate, we left cameras out in December. It was fascinating, dude. This one buck showed up. We're like, where in the hell did he come from? Holy crap. Yeah. And the reality is he was probably there the whole time. I don't know. Probably. And he's still there right now. We still get pictures. He didn't have horns anymore, but
did you go find his sheds?
Well, we tried. We tried once last weekend, and we couldn't. You know how it is out there. I mean, there's 100 ferns up to your knees and branches everywhere. Right? We're gonna go try again, but my blacktail, I think that is a real mental battle. The patience thing with hunting is a real mental battle. Yeah, of not giving up, and
it's so much easier with whitetails. Like this year I hunted Montana. It just was such a joy to sit in a tree stand and constantly see deer. It's like, this is so much better, right? But they're not those white-faced giants of the timber. So
they aren't. Yeah. Well, I got a plan for this year that I'm hoping you can come back out this year, because we learned a lot, and I think we got it reasonably dialed, as much as you can. With blacktails.
Sure.
Dude, I'm so excited about what you're doing, and I'm always so proud of you. I remember the first time that we interacted, and you've come so far, and I respect everything you're doing. I always learn from something from you,
I appreciate
and
it, man.
I just, it makes me happy to see all of your success. So congratulations, and it also makes me
Thank you.
happy that you're working with Blake, my brother, because he is a real genius, and
Yeah,
he's helped me a lot in my life, and
yeah,
I love seeing him get out there. So
yeah, yeah. He's amazing, and it's quite a journey, and it's just starting, man.
it's just beginning.
Yeah.
Um, where can people get the latest and greatest? Where do they need to go?
So the latest and greatest is turnermodel.com. That's the website. It's a very informational page. You'll see that, Blake built that. It's really cool. I mean, as far as websites go, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's mindiq.com, which is the online course page. There's shotiq.com. That's got all my shooting courses on it.
Uh-huh.
Joel Turner Actual on Instagram. And we're starting to put a bunch more stuff on YouTube. And
Are you going to do more elk stuff?
I am going to do more elk stuff because there's a
Okay.
lot of people that are, they tell me, man, we watched your stuff when we were in camp, or I was in the middle of the woods watching watching your videos. So I just did an elk presentation in Oregon at the traditional expo.
Oh,
And
cool.
it was a lot of fun, man. Because
Hey, how did that go? I know that's a new model. How was
yeah.
that?
Oh, it was good fun. Yeah. So next year they're
Good.
going to have a lot more shooting, and yeah, there's lots
Uh-huh.
of vendors there. It was a good place to be. Pendleton was great. So yeah, it was. I think next year is going to be way bigger than it was this year. So yeah,
That's rad,
phenomenal
man.
stuff.
Well, congrats, Joel, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. Thanks for coming on
Yeah. Thanks,
and
brother.
all the things. Everybody go check out Joel's stuff. Everybody knows it. Shit, you've been on Rogan. What do I need to say? All right.
Thanks, brother.